I set my fork down and watched the gravy pool around my mashed potatoes. The silence that followed Claire's outburst felt thick enough to serve, just like that turkey sitting at the center of our mother's best china. I had played this moment in my head 100 times over the past 3 hours. I had rehearsed calm responses. I had imagined my mother crying and my father clenching his jaw. But nothing had prepared me for the actual weight of their res. Claire stood with her chair tipped behind her, her hands braced against the table edge, as if she might physically reach across and shake the money out of me. Greg had gone perfectly still beside her, his face a mask of fully controlled shock. My father kept rubbing the bridge of his nose, a nervous habit that went all the way back to my childhood piano recitals. And my mother, poor gentle Ruth, had retreated into that quiet space she always found when tension rose too high in this house. $15 million Rs, Claire repeated, her voice dropping to something almost respectful, almost reverent. You don't just stumble into that kind of money and pretend it doesn't exist. I didn't pretend, I said. I just didn't announce it. My father looked up. Ra, how did this even happen? Your grandmother's brother, we rely knew him. He died without a will, didn't he? He died with a very specific will, I corrected gently. He left everything to me. I don't know why. I met him twice. Once at a family reunion when I was 9, and once at Grandma's funeral. He must have kept track of me somehow. Letters, maybe. Phone calls I never knew about. The lawyer said he had a folder full of newspaper clippings about my writing career. So he followed your work, Greg offered, trying to find something reasonable in all of this. That's nice. Nice, Claire spun on him. He gave her $15 million Rs because she wrote some articles about small-town bakeries and old barns. That's not nice. That's insanity. I bit my tongue. Those articles had 1 hour RDS. They had opened doors to a career I had built from nothing after dropping out of community college and working double shifts at a diner just to afford a laptop. My grandmother's brother, Edwa Road, had apparently collected every single one. The lawyer showed me a scrapbook at the reading of the will. It had photographs of my high school graduation, a ticket stub from a poetry reading I gave in a coffee shop in Portland, a printed email from a magazine editor praising my submission. I never knew he was watching. I never knew anyone was watching. But I knew Claire would never understand that. To her, money was a thing that arrived or didn't. She measured success in paychecks and promotions. My life, freelance, unpredictable, built on grit and late nights, had always seemed frivolous to her, even when I was making enough to support myself. Claire, I said evenly, the money isn't liquid. Most of it was tied up in stocks and property. I had to work with lawyers and financial advisors to even access it. So you've been living on it, she pressed. That's how you afford that apartment in Brooklyn. That's why you travel so much. That's how I've been able to work fewer hours and write the book I've always wanted to write, I said. But the bulk of it, the $15 million, it's not in my checking account, Claire. It never was. My mother finally spoke. Where is it? Were you investing it? Were you waiting for the right time? I looked at her then, really looked. She was 62, with silver-streaked hair and hands that had worked too hard for too many hours. She had raised us on my father's modest salary as a high school science teacher, had clipped coupons and mended clothes and driven a minivan with duct tape on the bumper. She deserved peace. She deserved comfort. And I had planned to give that to her in time on my own terms. But Claire had forced my hand. I set up a foundation, I said, for children's education. In Maple Grove. The name hit them like a physical blow. My father went pale. My mother gasped. Even Greg, who had never been part of those EAROYRS, seemed to understand the weight of that name. Maple Grove. The town where we had NEAROY become WARDS of the state. The town where a stranger had once paid our rent so my mother could recover from her surgery without losing her children to foster care. The town where I had sat on the front steps of our rented house at age 12, holding my 6-year-old sister's hand, and promised her that everything would be okay even when I didn't believe it myself. You gave it away, Claire whispered. All of it. I donated the principal, I said. The interest generates annual grants. It will fund tuition for kids in Maple Grove for the next 50 years at least. And what about us? Claire's voice cracked. What about mom and dad's mortgage? What about Ethan's college? He's a junior in high school. Ra. He's looking at applications. He could go to a good school if we had Ethan is a good student, I said, turning to my nephew. He has a 4.0 GPA. He volunteers at the animal shelter. He can get scholarships. And if he doesn't, I will help him. Personally. From my own EA earnings. But I'm not handing out checks just because blood ties demand it. Ethan looked up, STA riled to be addressed directly. I don't want you to pay for me, and Ra. I'll figure it out. That's the right answer, I said softly. That's the kind of answer I was hoping for. Claire shook her head, TRS spilling now. You're punishing me. You're punishing all of us, because you're still angry about something that happened 20 years ago. 20 years ago you were 6 years old, I said. I'm not angry at you, Claire. I'm disappointed in us. In what we've become. Because somewhere along the way, we stopped being a family that helped each other and STA root being a family that kept score. My father pressed his palms flat against the table. That's not fair, Ra. We've always been there for each other. Have we? I looked around the table. When was the last time anyone asked me about my book or about the trip I took to Vermont or about anything that wasn't about money? No one answered. I reached for the manila envelope and slid it across the table to RD my father. This is the deed to the house in Maple Grove. The foundation bought it. I asked them to offer it to you rent-free for as long as you need it. But you have to pay taxes and maintenance. That's the deal. My father opened the envelope slowly. His hands trembled as he read the documents inside. This is the old Henderson property, he said. The house on Sycamore Lane. I remember you telling me you always loved that porch, I said. And Maple Grove is a better school district than the town you're in now. You could sell this house, pay off the mortgage, and move there. Not because of me. Because you want to. My mother STA root crying. Ra, honey, I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, I said. That's all I'm asking. Think about it. Don't make a decision tonight. Claire stood frozen, her TRS drying on her cheeks. What about me? You are not a child, Claire. You're a 32-year-old woman with a husband and a steady job. Greg lost his job. And Greg will find another one, I finished. You both will. And if you need a loan, I will write you a loan. With interest. With a repayment plan. Like a bank would. Because I love you, but I will not enable you. Not anymore. Greg opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Claire and, for a moment, something passed between them, a silent conversation I couldn't hear and didn't need to. He nodded slowly. She's right, he said. She's not wrong, Claire. Claire turned on him. You're taking her side, I'm taking the side of not destroying the only family we have, he said quietly. That's all I'm doing. The grandfather clock chimed 7. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, soft and silent against the windows. My mother wiped her face and picked up the serving spoon. Oh, we should eat, she said. The turkey is going to dry out. And so we did. We passed bowls and plates and made small talk about the weather and the pie and the football game on television. The tension didn't vanish, but it retreated to the edges of the room, where it could be ignored for an hour or two. I watched my sister push food around her plate. I watched my father hold the deed like it was made of glass. I didn't tell them about the second envelope. I didn't tell them that I had already paid their mortgage for the next 12 months through a separate trust. I didn't tell them that the foundation had secretly funded Ethan's summer program last year and that Lily's braces had been partially covered by an anonymous donor. I didn't tell them because they needed to believe, just for a while, that I had given everything away and that they had to stand on their own feet again. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give a family is not a check, but a challenge. The snow fell harder after dinner, fat white flakes that clung to the windows and blurred the outline of the neighbor's oak tree. My mother insisted we all stay the night, and no one argued. The guest room smelled of lavender sachets and old quilts, and I lay on the twin bed with my eyes open, listening to the house settle around me. Footsteps creaked overhead. Water ran through the pipes. Somewhere downstairs, the television murmured low voices and canned laughter. I had not slept in this room since I was 19, the summer I left for Oregon with nothing but a duffel bag and a bus ticket. Back then, the walls had been covered in band posters and fairy lights. Now they were painted a soft beige, as if my parents had erased every trace of the girl who used to live here. I didn't blame them. That girl had been angry and stubborn and impossible to reach. She had slammed doors and shouted terrible things about small towns and small minds and never coming back. I had come back, of course. Again and again. But always with one foot out the door, always with a plane ticket in my purse. A soft knock came at the door. I sat up, expecting my mother with a cup of warm milk or my father with some rd attempt at comfort. Instead, Claire slipped inside, closing the door behind her without a sound. She wore an old flannel robe, the same one she had owned since college, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like this, softer, more like the girl who used to follow me around the backyard with a butterfly net. "Can I sit?" she asked. I nodded and skid over on the bed. She sat on the edge, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the floral pattern on the quilt. "I can't sleep," she said. "My brain won't shut off." "Neither can I." She picked at a loose thread on the hem of the quilt. "I keep thinking about what you said at dinner. About keeping score. About how we stopped being a family who helps each other." I waited. Claire had never been good at apologies, but she had always been good at circling around them, like a cat deciding whether to jump onto a lap. "I don't remember Maple Grove," she said finally. "I remember the house, I think. A yellow house with a broken porch step. But I don't remember being red. I don't remember the social worker." "You were 6, I said. Your brain protected you from that. Do you remember it, every detail?" I pulled my knees up to my chest. I remember the way the social worker smelled like cigarettes and peppermint. I remember Mom crying in the kitchen while Dad tried to call the bank. I remember the lady who came to the door with a basket of groceries and an envelope full of cash. She told Mom it was from the church, but I found out later it was from the foundation. The one I gave all that money to. Claire turned to look at me. "You gave it back. That's what you did. You gave back what they gave us." "I gave back more," I said. "Way more." "But yes, that's exactly what I did. I couldn't keep that money, Claire. Every time I looked at the balance, I saw that social worker's clipaway road. I saw the fear on Mom's face. I saw myself at 12 years old, promising you that everything would be okay when I didn't know if it would be. You were just a kid. I was the oldest. That meant something." Claire was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the old window frame. The snow had turned to sleet, tapping against the glass like impatient fingers. "Greg and I have been fighting," she said. "Not just about the money. About everything. He wants to move to Ohio for a job that pays half what he used to make. I don't want to leave. I don't want to start over again." "Then don't," I said. "It's not that simple." "It never is. But you have a choice, Claire. You always have a choice." She looked at me then, her eyes glistening in the dim light from the hallway. "You always made it look so easy. Leaving. Rooting over. Building a life from nothing. Nothing easy about it," I said. "I cried in bus stations. I ate ramen for 3 months straight. I had a landlord change the locks on me because I was late on rent. You only saw the finished product. You didn't see the mess. I wish you had told me. Told you that I was struggling. You were struggling too. Everyone was struggling. That was the whole point of our family, Claire. We all struggled together, but we never talked about it. We just pretended everything was fine while the roof leaked and the car broke down and Mom cried in the bathroom when she thought nobody was listening." Claire wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her robe. "Is that why you left, because you couldn't pretend anymore?" I thought about that for a moment. Partly. But mostly I left because I needed to see if I could survive on my own. I needed to know that I wasn't just the product of this house, this town, this family. I needed to be something else. Something I chose. "And did you find it?" "I found pieces of it," I said. "I'm still finding it." She reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were cold, the same long, thin fingers I remembered from childhood when she used to hold my hand crossing the street. I was so angry at dinner. Not just about the money. About everything. About you being successful and me being stuck. About Greg losing his job and Mom getting older and Dad looking so tired all the time. I took it all out on you because you were the safest target. I know. I don't want to be that person, she said. I don't want to be the sister who only calls when she needs something. Then don't be. She laughed, a small, watery sound. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, but it's simple. You just decide, every day, to do something different. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. We sat together in the arcade for a while, listening to the sleet and the old house and the distant hum of the furnace. I thought about all the nights I had lain in this room as a teenager, dreaming of escape, dreaming of a life where nobody needed me to fix everything. I had escaped, and I had fixed nothing. My family was still a knot of unspoken resentments and buried via RS. The only thing that had changed was me. Mom told me something once, Claire said. After you left for Oregon. She said you were always the brave one. The one who walked into the fire. That's not brave. That's stupid. It's both, she said. That's what makes it you. I squeezed her hand. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the money. I should have found a way. A better way. Would you have told me if I hadn't found out? No, I admitted. Not yet. I wanted to wait until I had everything set up. The foundation. The trusts. The house. I wanted to present it all at once, like a gift, instead of letting it trickle out and become a source of drama. Instead, I made it a source of drama. Claire, you didn't make it anything. The money was always going to be complicated. That's why I gave it away. Because I didn't want it to own me. I didn't want it to own us. She nodded slowly. I think I understand that now. I mean, I still wish you had kept some of it. I still wish you had saved some for us. But I understand why you didn't. I kept enough, I said. Enough to live on. Enough to help if anyone really needs it. But not enough to make anyone dependent. That's the line I had to draw. That's a hard line to draw. The rightest, I agreed. But it's also the most important one. She let go of my hand and stood up, stretching her arms above her head. I should let you sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Where are you going to talk to Greg? She said. We need to figure out Ohio. And we need to figure out us. Before it's too late. Good luck. She paused at the door. Yeah, I'm glad you're my sister. Even when I'm terrible at showing it. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it in the arcade. I'm glad too, Claire. Even when you're terrible. She left the door cracked open, and the hallway light spilled in, a thin golden line across the floor. I lay back down and read at the ceiling, feeling something loosen in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It was something quieter. Something like hope. The snow had stopped. The house had gone still. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like I was wrying a secret. I felt. She stood at the stove in her faded apron, the one with the embroidered rooster on the pocket that she had owned for as long as I could remember. Her hair was pinned up haphazardly, and she moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had had 1,000 breakfasts in this kitchen. She turned when she heard me, and her face broke into a tired but genuine smile. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. I slept a little, I said. Claire came to talk. I know. I heard you too. She slid a piece of bacon onto a paper towel. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but these old walls are thin. Did you hear everything enough? She turned back to the stove. I heard my 2 daughters finally talking like real sisters. That's all I needed to hear. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same scratched wooden table where I had done my homework and eaten my cereal and cried over broken hearts. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft shadows across the linoleum floor. My father's coffee mug sat at his usual spot, still full, untouched. Where's Dad? I asked. Shoveling the driveway. He's been out there since 6. He likes the quiet. I nodded. My father had always liked the quiet. He was a man of few words and deep feelings, the kind of person who expressed love through actions rather than speech. He had fixed my bicycle chain 100 times without ever saying he loved me. He had driven me to the bus station the day I left for Oregon and simply handed me an envelope of cash and hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. Mom, I said ruefully, can I ask you something? She turned, spatula in hand. Of course, honey. Did you know about the foundation? Before last night, I mean. She was quiet for a moment, wiping her hands on her apron. Then she sat down across from me, her face soft with something I couldn't quite read. I knew you had done something, she said. I got a letter about 2 years ago from a law firm in Portland. They said someone had set up a trust in my name for medical expenses. I thought it was a scam at first. I almost threw it away. But you didn't. No. I called the number. The lawyer explained everything. They wouldn't tell me who had set it up, but I knew. I knew it was you. I read at her. You knew the whole time, I suspected, she said. I didn't know the full amount. I didn't know about the 15 million. But I knew you were looking out for us. You always have. Why didn't you say anything? She reached across the table and took my hand. Because I figured you would tell me when you were ready. I know you, Ra. You don't do things in pieces. You do them in your own time, in your own way. I trusted that. I felt a lump form in my throat. Mom, I'm sorry I kept it from you. I should have told you. You don't owe me an apology, she said firmly. You owe me nothing. You have given more to this family than anyone could ever ask for. More than money. You've given your time, your heart, your patience. And you did it all quietly, without asking for anything in return. That's not true, I said. I asked. I just didn't ask out loud. She squeezed my hand. I know, sweet art. I know. The back door opened, and my father stomped in, brushing snow from his coat. His cheeks were red from the cold, and his glasses were fogged. He hung his coat on the hook by the door and came to the table, kissing the top of my mother's head before sitting down. Driveway's done, he said. Snowplow came by, so I had to do it twice. Thank you, Frank, my mother said, already rising to pour him a cup of coffee. He looked at me over the rim of his mug. You sleep okay? Better than I expected, I said. Good. We have a lot to talk about today. My mother set a plate of bacon and eggs in front of me, then one in front of my father. She sat down with her own coffee and watched us eat, the way she always did, as if our hunger gave her some deep maternal satisfaction. What do you want to talk about? I asked. My father pulled the manila envelope from his coat pocket, the same one I had given him at dinner. He set it on the table between us. This house, he said. The one in Maple Grove. You really think we should move? I think you should consider it, I said. You don't have to decide today. But I want you to know the offer's real. The foundation owns the property outright. You can live there for as long as you want, no rent, no strings. All you have to do is cover the property taxes and the upkeep. My mother looked at my father. Frank, we've been talking about this for years. We can't afford to stay here much longer. The roof needs replacing. The furnace is ancient. Every winter, we worry about pipes freezing. I know, he said. I know. But Maple Grove is 2 hours away. We'd be leaving everything we know. You'd be leaving a house, my mother said gently. You'd be leaving a money pit that's been draining us dry. That's not the same as leaving a home. He was quiet for a long moment, ring at the envelope. I watched his face, the way his jaw tightened and relaxed, the way his fingers traced the edge of the table. My father was a proud man. He had never taken a handout in his life. He had worked 2 jobs when my mother was sick, had sold his vintage CAR collection to pay for her treatment, had refused every offer of help from neighbors and friends. Accepting this felt like admitting defeat to him. Dad, I said softly, this isn't charity. This is something I can do because I want to do it. Because I love you and Mom. Because you gave me everything you had when I was growing up, and I want to give something back. You don't have to give back, he said gruffly. That's not how family works. That's exactly how family works, my mother said. We take care of each other. We don't keep score. He looked at her, then at me, then down at the envelope. I'll think about it, he said finally. That's all I'm promising. That's all I'm asking, I said. Claire and Greg Ape read in the doorway, still in their pajamas. Ethan and Lily trailed behind them, sleepy-eyed and rumple-haired. The kitchen suddenly felt fuller, warmer, more alive. My mother jumped up to make more bacon, and Greg sta root pouring orange juice, and the chaos of a family morning engulfed us all. I watched Claire from across the table. She caught my eye and smiled, a small, tentative smile that told me more than words could. We had a long way to go, the two of us. But we had sta root walking. My father folded the envelope and tucked it back into his coat pocket. He didn't say anything else about the house, but I saw the way he touched it, almost protectively, as if it held something precious. Maybe it did. Maybe it held the promise of a future where he didn't have to worry every time the furnace kicked on. Maybe it held the chance for my mother to have a garden again, the kind she used to tend in Maple Grove, back when she had energy and hope and time. The snow had stopped completely now, and the sun was rising over the treetops, casting long blue shadows across the road. I ate my eggs and listened to Lily describe a dream she had about a talking squirrel. I watched Ethan pour syrup over his pancakes with the focused precision of a teenager who took breakfast very seriously. I watched Greg put his hand on Claire's back, a small gesture of solidarity that hadn't been there the night before. And I thought about all the Thanksgivings to come, all the mornings we would spend in kitchens just like this one, all the arguments and reconciliations and quiet moments of grace. Money was not the root of our problems, and it was not the solution to them either. The solution was sitting around this table, eating bacon and drinking coffee, choosing each other over and over again. That was the gift I had given away. And it was the only one that truly mattered. After breakfast, Greg announced he was taking the kids sledding at the old hill behind the high school. Ethan groaned about being too old for sledding, but Lily grabbed his arm and dragged him toward the closet where the plastic saucers were stored. Claire looked at me with something that bordered on desperation. She wanted to come too, I could see it, but she also wanted to stay and finish what we had sta root the night before. I solved the problem by grabbing my coat. "I'll come," I said. "I haven't been sledding in 20 hours. I need to make sure I still remember how to fall." Claire's face relaxed into a genuine grin. "You always were terrible at falling. Graceful in everything else, but falling you went down like a sack of potatoes. Some things never change." We bundled up in borrowed hats and gloves, Claire's old college scarf wrapped 3 times around my neck. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving a pristine blanket over the entire neighborhood. The sky was that particular shade of pale winter blue that made everything look crisp and new. My boots crunched through the fresh powder as we walked toward the high school, the kids running ahead, their laughter echoing off the silent houses. Greg fell into step beside me. "Thanks for this," he said quietly. "For getting her out of the house. She's been wound up for months. I can tell. Losing my job hit her harder than it hit me," he said. "She's always been the planner, the worrier. She needs to know everything is going to be okay, and she couldn't control this. Couldn't control any of it." I nodded. Claire has always needed to control things. That's how she copes. When she can't, she lashes out. Last night was her lashing out at you. "I know," I said. "I've been on the receiving end of it before. The difference is, this time I understood why." Greg was quiet for a moment. "She told me about the talk you two had last night. About Maple Grove. About why you gave the money away. I didn't know any of that. She never talks about that time. She was 6. She doesn't remember most of it. But the scars are still there. They just express themselves differently." We reached the hill, and Lily was already climbing to the top, dragging her saucer behind her. Ethan followed more slowly, his phone in his pocket for once, his attention on the slope ahead. Claire stood at the base of the hill, looking up with an expression I recognized, the same look she used to wear when we were kids, a mix of anticipation and fear. "Last one down is a rotten egg," she called up to Lily. Lily shrieked and launched herself down the hill, her saucer spinning in lazy circles. Her laughter rang out, pure and unrestrained, and for a moment, I forgot about trusts and foundations and $15 million RS. I forgot about mortgages and job losses and sibling resentments. I just watched my niece fly down a hill of snow, and I remembered what it felt like to be that young, that free, that unburdened. Ethan went next, with more dignity but no less speed. Greg followed, Whooping like a teenager, his arms spread wide as he careened down the slope. Claire looked at me, her eyes bright. Your turn, she said. I haven't done this in 20 hours, Claire. Neither have I. That's the point. We climbed to the top together, the snow crunching beneath our boots. I sat on the saucer, my knees tucked up, my heart already racing. Claire sat on her own saucer beside me, her grin matching the one she used to we are when we were girls, daring each other to do something reckless. Ready? She asked. Ready. We pushed off together, and the world became a blur of white and blue and cold air against my cheeks. The hill rushed up to meet me, and I leaned back, letting the speed take me, laughing louder than I had in years. Claire was beside me, her scarf trailing behind her like a banner, her laughter mixing with mine. We crashed at the bottom in a heap of tangled limbs and wet snow, gasping and laughing and completely undignified. Greg came over to help us up, shaking his head. I thought you said you knew how to fall. Knowing how, Claire said, brushing snow from her hair and actually doing it two different things. We spent the next hour going up and down the hill, until our legs ached and our noses were numb and Lily root whining about being cold. Greg ride her on his shoulders back to the house, and Ethan walked beside me, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. "Aunt Raw," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Is it true you gave away all that money?" "Most of it," I said. "I kept enough to live on. The rest went to a foundation that helps kids." He nodded slowly. "My mom was really upset about it. She said you should have helped us first." "She was upset because she was SCA red," I said. SCA red about the future. SCA red about money. SCA red about not being able to take CA of you and Lily. That fear came out as anger. "It wasn't really about me." "But you helped, right? You helped people." "I helped," I said. "But I also had to help in a way that didn't make anyone dependent on me." "That's the RT. That's the RT I'm still learning." He was quiet for a long moment. "I want to go to college for engineering," he said. "I've been saving up for my job at the RDWA restore. I don't want anyone to pay for it for me." "That's a good instinct," I said. "But there's nothing wrong with accepting help when you need it. The trick is knowing the difference between help and handout." "What's the difference?" "Help is something that gives you a leg up without taking away your independence. A handout is something that makes you dependent. Help makes you stronger. Handout makes you weaker." That's what I tried to do with the foundation. I tried to help, not hand out. He thought about that for a while. "I think I understand." "Good," I said. "Because I have a feeling you're going to be a great engineer someday. And when you are, you can help people too. That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work." We reached the house, and the smell of my mother's chili welcomed us inside. The kids shed their wet clothes by the back door, and Claire handed me a cup of hot cocoa, her cheeks still flushed from the cold. "I haven't laughed like that in years," she said. "Neither have I admitted." We sat on the couch together, sipping our cocoa, watching the snow begin to fall again outside the window. My mother was in the kitchen, humming to herself. My father was in his room chair, reading the newspaper. Greg was playing a card game with the kids at the kitchen table. And I was sitting beside my sister, not as a benefactor or a rival, but as a friend. "I'm glad you came home," Claire said. "I'm glad I came home too." She leaned her head against my shoulder, just like she used to when we were little, and I felt the last of the tension drain out of her. We had a long way to go, the two of us. But we had STA route walking. And for now, that was enough. That evening, after the chili bowls had been scraped clean and the dishes were stacked in the sink, my father read into the GA rage and emerged with a CA Boe road box. He set it on the coffee table with the kind of CA refill reverence that made my mother stop mid-sentence and Claire lean forward in her chair. "What's this?" I asked. "Old photographs," my father said. "I found them in the attic last spring. Thought you girls might want to look through them." He opened the box, and the smell of dust and old paper drifted out. My mother pulled out a stack of albums with peeling covers, their pages yellowed and cracked. Claire reached for one, and I watched her flip through it, her face softening as she recognized faces and places from a past she remembered. "This is the Maple Grove house," she said, pointing to a faded photograph. "The yellow one." I moved closer to look. There it was, just as I remembered it, a small bungalow with a sagging porch and a swing that had never quite hung straight. My mother stood on the front steps, young and thin, holding an infant Claire in her arms. I was beside her, maybe 7 years old, with pigtails and missing front teeth. "That was the year our mom got sick," I said quietly. My father nodded. "We moved out of that house 6 months later. Rented a place on the other side of town. Smaller. Cheaper." "I don't remember the move," Claire said. "I remember the yellow house, but I don't remember leaving." "You were too young," my mother said. Sarah remembers because she was older. She helped pack. I took the photograph from Claire's hands and studied it. The porch swing. The chipped paint on the railing. The flower boxes my mother had planted, long since dead and gone. I remembered sitting on that front step with Claire on my lap, watching the mailman walk past, waiting for something good to happen. It never did, not in that house. But we had survived. We had survived because people had helped us. "Why did you keep all these?" I asked my father. He shrugged, a gesture I recognized as discomfort. "I didn't want to forget. That's all. Just didn't want to forget." My mother pulled out another album, this one more recent. Photographs of Claire's wedding. Photographs of Ethan as a baby, bald and squalling. Photographs of family picnics and birthday parties and all the ordinary moments that had slipped away without us noticing. "Look at this one," my mother said, handing me a photograph of Claire and me at Christmas. I must have been 18, Claire 12. We were wearing matching sweaters, our arms around each other, smiling like we had never had a fight in our lives. "I remember that sweater," I said. "You knitted it yourself, Mom." "It was hideous." "It was festive," my mother said firmly. "There's a difference." Claire laughed. "I wore that sweater until it fell apart. I loved it." "You loved anything Sarah had," my mother said. "You followed her around like a shadow. Drove her crazy." "I still drive her crazy," Claire said. "But she loves me anyway." I looked at her, surprised by the easy way she said it. A day ago, she had been shouting at me across the dinner table. Now she was laughing about childhood sweaters and admitting she followed me around. Something had shifted between us, something I hadn't dared to name. "What happened to us?" I asked quietly. "When did we stop being like this?" The room went still. My father set down the photograph he had been holding. My mother's hands paused over the album. Claire looked at me, her eyes sea urching mine. "We grew up," Claire said. "We got busy. We got tired. We stopped talking about the important things and root talking about bills and schedules and who was doing what for whom." "That's not all of it," I said. "There was something else. Something that happened between us." My mother took a breath. "Your father and I argued about money a lot when you were growing up. We tried to hide it from you, but I think you both knew. You especially, Sarah. You always knew." "I knew," I admitted. "I used to lie in bed at night and listen to you fight. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the tone. I knew when it was bad." "We should have done better," my father said. "We should have protected you from that." "You did what you could," I said. "But I think that's where it root. That's when I root thinking about money as something to be afraid of. Something that could destroy a family." "And then you got a lot of it," Claire said. "And you were more afraid than ever." I nodded. I was terrified. Terrified of what it would do to us. Terrified of becoming the person who controlled everything. Terrified of losing all of you. "We're still here," Claire said. "I know," I said. "But it took almost losing you to realize that." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. "Sarah, you never lost us. Not for a second. We might have been angry or confused or hurt. But we never left. We never stopped loving you." "I know that now," I said. "I didn't know it then." My father read his throat. "I have something to show you." He reached into the box and pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. "I found this when I was clearing out the attic. It was in a box of your grandmother's things." He handed it to me. I opened it ruefully, pulling out a handwritten letter on faded stationery. The handwriting was shaky, elderly, but unmistakable. "My dear Sarah," the letter began. "If you are rereading this, then I have already passed. I have been watching you from afar, and I have been proud. You are strong and kind and resourceful, just like your grandmother. I am leaving you everything I have, because I trust you to do the right thing with it. Use it well and use it wisely. And remember, my dar, that money is only a tool. It cannot buy happiness, but it can buy freedom. I hope you use it to find yours. I read at the letter in my hands. My grandmother's brother, the man I had met twice, the man who had left me $15 million Rs. He had been watching me. He had been proud of me. And he had trusted me to do the right thing. Ista root to cry. Not the quiet TRS of the night before, but real, messy TRS that I couldn't stop. Claire put her arm around me, and my mother pressed a tissue into my hand, and my father just sat there, letting his silence say everything. I didn't know he felt that way. I managed. I didn't know he was paying attention. He was paying attention, my mother said softly. He always was. He just didn't know how to show it. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my pocket. The box of photographs sat on the coffee table, a testament to all the moments we had read and all the moments we had forgotten. My father was right. We shouldn't forget. I'm going to keep this, I said. I'm going to keep all of it. This is what matters. Not the money. Not the foundation. This. Right here. Claire squeezed my shoulder. That's the first SMART thing you've said all weekend. I laughed through my TRS. You're impossible. Runs in the family, she said. And for a moment, sitting in that RM living room with my mother's photographs scattered around us and my father's quiet presence anchoring us all, I felt like I had finally come home. Not to the house. Not to the town. But to the people who had made me who I was. The people who would always be there, no matter what. Sunday morning arrived with a different quality of light, softer somehow, as if the sky itself was taking a deep breath after the storm. I woke to the sound of church bells from the steeple down the street, a sound I had not heard in years, but that still felt like an old friend. My mother was already in the kitchen, this time with pancakes instead of eggs, and my father had the Sunday paper spread across the table like a map of his morning. Claire came down in her pajamas, her hair still mussed from sleep, and poured herself a cup of coffee without saying a word. I watched her take her seat, watched the way she reached automatically for the sugar bowl, the same one we had used since childhood. There was something deeply comforting in that small repetition, in the way we all fell into our old habits without thinking. Ethan and Lily are still asleep, Greg announced, coming in from the living room. I think we wore them out yesterday. Good, my mother said. Growing kids need their rest. I pushed my plate aside and looked at my parents. I want to tell you something, I said. Something I should have told you a long time ago. My father folded his paper and set it down. My mother turned from the stove, her spatula still in her hand. Claire looked up from her coffee, her eyes wary but not hostile. Go ahead, my father said. I didn't just set up the foundation, I said. I also set up a personal trust. For you and Mom. It's not huge, but it's enough to cover your property taxes and basic living expenses for the next 10 years. I wanted to tell you last night, but I couldn't. Not after everything that happened at dinner. My mother's face went pale. You didn't have to do that. I know I didn't have to, I said. I wanted to. But I also wanted to say something else. I wanted to say that I understand now why I was so secretive about the money. It wasn't just about protecting myself. It was about protecting all of you from the worst parts of myself. Claire set down her coffee. What do you mean? I mean that when I got that inheritance, I was terrified, I said. Not of the money, but of what it would do to me. I had spent my whole life struggling, scraping by, learning to be tough and independent. And suddenly, I didn't have to be tough anymore. I didn't have to struggle. Part of me liked that too much. Part of me wanted to keep it all, to build a fortress around myself and never let anyone in again. My father leaned four-way road, but you didn't do that. No, I said. I gave it away. But it was a close thing. There were nights when I sat in my apartment and looked at that bank balance and thought about all the ways I could use it to make myself invisible. To disappear into a life where nobody needed me, nobody expected anything from me, nobody could hurt me. My mother crossed the kitchen and sat down beside me. Sarah, we would never have been that. We would never have hurt you like that. I know that now, I said. But I didn't know it then. All I knew was that money had always been the thing that tore our family apart. It was the thing that made you and Dad fight. It was the thing that made us almost lose everything. And when I got all of it, I thought I had to choose between keeping the money and keeping my family. I didn't realize I could have both. Claire reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to choose. You didn't make me feel anything, I said. I made myself feel that way. I built the whole story in my head, and then I lived inside it for 3 hours. I didn't give you a chance to be anything other than what I expected. What do you expect now? My father asked. I looked at him, at his tired eyes and his steady hands. I expect you to be exactly who you are, I said. I expect us to argue sometimes and to misunderstand each other and to get on each other's nerves. But I also expect us to come back together like we always do. That's what family is. That's what I want. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Claire sta root crying, not loudly, just tears spilling down her cheeks. She wiped them with the back of her hand and laughed. I'm such a mess, she said. Welcome to the club, I said. My mother got up and brought over a box of tissues. We're all messes, she said. That's what makes us interesting. The mood lightened after that. Greg made a joke about needing more coffee, and my father laughed, a genuine laugh that I hadn't heard in years. Ethan and Lily wandered in, bleary-eyed and demanding breakfast, and the kitchen filled with the familiar chaos of a family Sunday morning. I slipped away after the pancakes were gone, retreating to the back porch with my coffee. The snow had melted in patches, revealing brown grass and the first hints of the winter garden. I sat on the old wooden swing, the one my father had built when I was 10, and let the cold air clear my head. Claire found me a few minutes later, wrapped in my mother's old wool shawl. She sat down beside me, and the swing creaked under our combined weight. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine, I said. I'm just thinking. About what comes next? About going back to New York. About whether I want to go back at all. She looked at me, her eyes wide. You're thinking about staying? I don't know, I admitted. I have a life there. Friends, a career, an appartement I actually like. But I've been thinking about what that life is really worth. I spend so much time chasing things that don't matter. And I come back here, to this house, to this family, and I realize that this is the only thing that does. Claire was quiet for a moment. You could come back, she said ruefully. Not live here, necessarily, but close. There's good work in Portland. You could write anywhere. Portland, I repeated. I haven't lived in Oregon since I was 19. Things change, she said. People change. You've changed. We've all changed. I looked at her, really looked. She was still Claire, still my younger sister, still the girl who had followed me around like a shadow. But she was also something else now, someone stronger and more complicated, someone I was still learning to know. I'll think about it, I said. That's all I'm promising. That's all I'm asking, she said. We sat on the swing together, watching the clouds drift across the pale blue sky. The church bells had stopped ringing. The neighborhood was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running toward something or away from something. I just felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The snow had melted entirely by Monday morning, leaving behind a world that looked rinsed and renewed. I packed my suitcase slowly, folding each piece of clothing with our that I was delaying the inevitable. The flight back to New York left at 4 in the afternoon, and I had promised my mother I would stay for lunch. But the house felt different now, emptier somehow, as if the weekend had drawn something out of all of us and left us raw and exposed. My mother knocked on the door as I was zipping my bag. She came in with a small box wrapped in brown paper and set it on the bed. This is for you, she said. Open it when you get home. Not before. I looked at the box, then at her. Mom, you didn't have to get me anything. It's not a gift, she said. It's a reminder. That's all. I hugged her, holding on a little longer than usual. She smelled like lavender and flower, the same scent she had ride my entire life. I wanted to bottle it and take it with me, to keep it close on the days when I felt far away. Claire was waiting for me in the kitchen, a cup of tea in her hands. She set it down when I walked in and stood up, awkward and uncertain. I crossed the room and hugged her too, and she melted into me like she used to when we were girls. "I'm going to miss you," she said. "I'm going to miss you too." Greg Ape read with the kids, and Lily ran into my arms, her small face pressed against my coat. Ethan gave me a 1A med hug, already too CL for public displays of affection, but I saw the gratitude in his eyes. My father brought my suitcase to the car and stood by the trunk, his hands in his pockets, not quite meeting my gaze. "Dad," I said, "are you okay?" He nodded. "Just thinking." About what? He looked at me then, really looked. "About how proud I am of you. About how much you've grown. About how much I wish I could have been a better father to you when you were little." I felt my throat tighten. "Dad, you were a great father. You did everything you could." "Not everything," he said. "But I tried. And I hope that counts." "Dad, it counts. It counts more than you know." He hugged me then, a tight, brief hug that spoke volumes. My father had never been good with words, but he had always been good with hugs. I held on to him for a moment longer than necessary, letting the warmth of him soak into me. Claire drove me to the airport. The drive was quiet, but not uncomfortable, filled with the kind of silence that comes after too many words have been spoken. We passed the old high school and the library and the diner where we used to get milkshakes. We passed the hill where we had gone sledding, now just a green slope dotted with berry trees. "I've been thinking about what you said," Claire said. "About coming back." "Me too. I don't know if I could do it," she admitted. "Move back here full time, I mean. I've been away too long. But I could visit more. I could make more of an effort." "That's all I ever wanted," I said. "Just more effort. More phone calls. More real conversations." "You're right," she said. "I've been lazy. We've both been lazy. But I'm done with that. I'm done with being lazy about us." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Me too." The airport was small and quiet, a far cry from the chaos of JFK. Claire parked in the short-term lot and walked me to the check-in counter. We stood together by the security line, neither of us wanting to be the first to say goodbye. "I have something for you," I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out a sealed envelope and handed it to her. "Open it when you get home. Not before." She laughed, the same watery laugh from Sunday morning. "You sound just like Mom." "Comes with the territory," I said. "It's not money, Claire. It's something else. Something more important." She tucked the envelope into her coat pocket. "I'll open it tonight," she promised. "I'll call you after." "Good." We hugged one last time, a long, fierce hug that said everything we hadn't said in years. Then I turned and walked through security, looking back once to see her still standing there, her hand raised in a small wave. The plane took off on time, and I watched the town shrink beneath me, the patchwork of fields and houses giving way to clouds and sky. I thought about the weekend and everything that had happened, all the shouting and the TRS and the quiet moments of reconciliation. I thought about Claire and my parents and the children who were growing up too fast. I thought about the foundation and the trust and the letter from my grandmother's brother. And I thought about the second envelope, still sitting in my bag, the one I had never shown them. It contained a deed to a small house in Portland, a house I had bought 6 months ago, a house I had never told anyone about. I had planned to move there eventually, after the book was finished, after I had made peace with my family. But now it felt like the next step, not an escape, but a homecoming. The flight attendant came by with drinks, and I ordered a coffee, settling into my seat. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document, typing the words that had been forming in my head all weekend. Chapter 1, I wrote. The Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house was supposed to be simple. But simple is not something my family has ever been good at. I smiled at the words and kept writing. The book I had been struggling with for months was finally coming together, not because I had solved my family's problems, but because I had finally understood them. Understanding, I realized, was not the same as fixing. It was something better. It was something like peace. The plane descended into New York, and I gathered my things, ready for the next chapter. I would go home to my apartment and unpack and make a decision about Portland in the coming weeks. I would call Claire that night and hear about the envelope. I would send my mother flowers and my father a book about woodworking that I had picked up at the airport shop. And somewhere in all of that, I would figure out who I was becoming. Not the woman who ran away from her family. Not the woman who gave away her fortune. Not the woman who held secrets and guarried her heart. But the woman who could hold all of it, the love and the fear and the hope, and still find a way four-way road. I thought about the next Thanksgiving, about the house in Maple Grove and the porch swing and the sound of my mother's laughter. I thought about Claire and Greg and the kids, about the fights we would still have and the reconciliations that would follow. I thought about my father, standing in the driveway with his hands in his pockets, trying to say everything with his eyes. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was mine, and it was real, and that was enough. The doors opened, and I walked out into the cold New York air, ready for whatever came next. I had given away $15 million RS, and I had never felt richer. I had faced my family's worst impulses, and I had found forgiveness. I had built a life on my own terms, and I had finally learned to let other people in. The second envelope sat in my bag, a promise of more to come. But for now, I was content to walk out of the airport and into the city, carrying nothing but the weight of a weekend that had changed everything.